All right, so we are going to play this at our next live Zoom meeting. So if you haven't watched it, don't worry, we're going to watch it again. I've watched it like 20 times, and to me, it never gets old. So don't worry if you haven't watched it. We are going to watch it next week. All right, so we're going to fast forward to where we ended on Tuesday. Hold tight. This is where we ended, which is right here. All right, so the classical criminology, Caesar Beccaria, you do need to know that he's the founding father of modern criminology. Very, very important because he wrote on crimes and punishment, and he was enlightened as far as the criminal justice system that would serve the people rather than the monarchy. So he's very important. Also, with classic criminology, Jeremy Bentham is very important as far as rationality and human rights. He was very important as far as due process, that an accused should be presumed innocent and not subject to punishment. And this was in a time of torture. So he believed that this was new for the time period, that you should be presumed innocent and not guilty and not be tortured. We also have the neoclassical perspective that's rooted in the classical school. And examples under this period are the rational choice theory that we have spoke about and the routine activities theory. So does deterrence work? Again, this is where you put the fear of crime into people. Under this, we have the instrumental crimes, crimes that bring material rewards. So, even though you have people fearing that, hey, you're going to get punished if you commit crimes, they do bring material rewards. And there's also expressive crimes that bring psychological rewards. Hey, you're going to be rewarded for being a criminal. People are going to think you're really cool because you did something possibly really cool. And they think that you're to be feared possibly because you committed a crime. And then we have what's called recidivism, and you do need to understand what recidivism is. And that picture on the upper right-hand side of your screen is very perfect as far as that, what we call the revolving door. So whenever I think of recidivism, I always think of that revolving door, that in and out and in and out, the recidivism door of prison, that it can't be thought of as in and out and in and out. It's supposed to be a place that you go in and it's rehabilitation. It's a place to not go back to. You learn how to not commit a crime again, to not be a criminal. And unfortunately, it's seen as a revolving door. So falling back into criminal behavior, it's a lot more common among ex-convicts. It's so interesting. There's actually a lot of videos and a lot of documentaries done where you will see criminals commit crime. They go in, they might be thin and not in great shape and not doing very good. And all of a sudden they go into the system, whether it be jail or prison, and they start getting meals and they start working out and they start looking good. And all of a sudden they go back out and start committing crime, and they go through that revolving door and it starts all over again. And what's sad is about a third of released inmates recidivate within the first 6 months. So 44% within the first year are back in, 54% by the second year, and 67.5% by the third year. That's sad. Sigmund Freud is where we get the foundation of our psychological theories of crime. And then we have our biological theories of crime. And then we have our cognitive development theories of crime, where offenders have failed to develop the capacity to make moral judgments. And we have Jean Piaget that have identified 4 stages in the cognitive development of children, where there's what we call a sensor motor stage, which is between 0 and 2 years of age. the pre-operational stage between 2 and 7 years of age, and the concrete operational stage between 7 and 11 years of age, and the formal operation stage, which is 12 years of age and older. We also have the biosocial theories, and scholars have combined the knowledge of biological factors of crime with the understanding of social environments. Modern perspectives do not identify biological factors as the sole cause of crime and investigate how biological traits can contribute to crime and interact with social environments to produce criminological behaviors. This is all under your biosocial theories. Then we have a sociological theories of crime overview, where we have the macro level theories. It's more on the larger social structures, such as environment and institutions, that guide your sociological theories of crime under schools, your peer groups, and your family, that help explain criminal behavior. We also have our social disorganization theory. How can neighborhood environments contribute to criminal behaviors? This was heavily studied, especially in neighborhoods where there were lots of gangs that stepped in as that family social group. Robert Park and Ernest Burgess looked in the city of Chicago and did a lot of studies, and they suggested that as cities grew and they prospered, that residents either were forced out of the business zones or they chose to exit because of what was going on. You had what was called the social disorganization theory taking over through the sociological theories of crime. Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay had the expansion of factories, immigration, and the creation of the suburban communities, which led to the breakdown in what we call traditional communities. And as a result of the lack of community cohesion, criminal behavior began to rise, and it reflects how crime is related to social economic status. Here's a look at Shaw and Mackay's theory of social disorganization. They saw in their theory of social disorganization how you had poverty, you had a cultural mix, you had physical dilapidation, a high mobility of residents, other social ills, and it all created criminal behavior, is what they put forth in their theory. You also had a strain theory, and this strain theory said that, hey, people commit crime due to the pressure or just stress and strain, that people committed crime to get away from the strain, that they committed theft because they were poor, that they were violent to get away from the harassment, that they used drugs to get away from the strain of being poor, that it was society's way of reacting to all of the strain. So it's the strain theory. Edward Sutherland, also, we're still under the sociological theory of crime, had what we called the differential association theory. And there were 9 principles to the differential association theory, and you'll see this on the quiz. And you kind of want to know the different principles. So principle 1 was criminal behaviors learned. Principle 2 is criminal behavior is learned in interaction with other persons in a process of communication. Principle 3 is the principal part of the learning of criminal behavior occurs within intimate personal groups. Principle 4 is when criminal behavior is learned, the learning includes techniques of committing the crime, which are sometimes very complicated, sometimes very simple. The specific direction of motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitudes. The specific direction of motives and drives is learned from definitions of legal codes as favorable or unfavorable. A person becomes delinquent because of an excess of definitions favorable to violations of law of definitions. Principle 7, differential associations may vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. Principle 8, the process of learning criminal behavior by association with criminal and anti-criminal patterns involves all the mechanisms that are involved in any other learning. And finally, principle 9, While criminal behavior is an expression of general needs and values, it's not explained by those general needs and values, since non-criminal behavior is an expression of the same needs and values. So just remember, when you're taking the quiz, know where to turn for Sutherland's principle of differential association. And then we have the labeling theory. So in 1963, Howard Becker suggested that criminality is not a quality inherent in the person or the acts. It results from a definition through what's considered unacceptable behavior, which we've talked about. You're labeled as a deviant. We've talked about this. We also have Edwin Lemert that has basic assumptions that said there's primary deviations and then secondary deviations. Your primary deviations is that initial deviant acts brings that first social response, and then your secondary deviation says that the act that follows that first response results from a change in the self-concept brought on by the labeling process. And then this kind of talks about that labeling process, how you have a label that's attached by the police and courts, and then that label becomes the status that overrides other statuses by a sibling or a friend. The labeled person accepts the label, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, whether or not the label's true. So pretty interesting, and there's a YouTube video on that really goes through this and how the labeling process works. It's pretty interesting, and I have the link there if you want to check it out. Then we have the social bond theory by Travis Hershey that talks about the heavy involvement in conventional activities that leaves little time for illegal behavior, and how involvement with activities that promote the interests of society. A busy person doing conventional things has little time for deviant activities. So he really talked how in the sociological theories of crime, the social bond theory is so important. He goes over, again, attachments, commitment, involvement, and belief, and how important it is, especially with children in middle school and in high school, to be involved, whether it's with groups, with clubs, with athletics, no matter what it is. Those attachments, those commitments, those involvements and beliefs are very, very important. Then we move on to Hershey got together with Gottfredson and looked at a general theory of crime, and they differentiated between criminality and crime, as far as criminality being the propensity to offend and crime being the actual event. And they said the propensity could not be acted on unless the opportunity to do so existed. And then we have the rise of feminist criminology. For much of history, we really focused on just men. A lot of the empirical studies used male-only samples, and theories constructed to explain why men and boys broke the law. Only males, not women. Most of the early criminologists were only males, not women. So, conclusion, there's a ton of theories, and we actually only looked at a few. So I tried to focus on the important ones, as far as the ones that have been studied the most and looked at the most. But if you're really interested in going through and getting your PhD, there's a lot more, and you can definitely move on to focusing more about this and doing a lot of research. It's really, really cool. Each perspective has added a new contribution to the understanding of criminal behavior, and we're always adding to it and understanding more. That's the coolest part about it, because no single theory can explain all acts of crime, because we're human. Each theory has its strengths and weaknesses. All right, here's a kind of look that you can kind of pause to make this kind of all start to make sense about rational choice theory, biological and biosocial theories, your social learning theory, and your label theory. You can pause the video here. And if you have any questions, I have on the front page of Moodle my virtual office hours. You're more than welcome to send me an email during any of those times, and I can give you a phone call. Just send me your cell number, or I can send you a Zoom link and we can meet via Zoom. I'm free during any of those times. All right, now we are going to move on to your journal assignment that's due this Sunday, because it's a little bit different. So I want to run through what you're going to be doing. All right, so we're doing what's called traffic offenses. I know, huh? How strange. All right, actually, I'm kind of ahead of the group right here. So, let's open this up. All right, so what you're going to do is I'm going to show you that PowerPoint I went to first. And you're going to, through this PowerPoint, I'm going to show you some different traffic violations. And then you are going to read through these steps again. I'm going to read them to you first. And you're going to go through these different steps. I just want you to basically kind of go out into your area of town somewhere. It's good to do it during the day at least one time and during the night at least one time. It's good to go in different locations if you can. The busier, kind of the better. Just make sure you're safe. Safety is the most important. But what you're going to do is when you see a star or green text or something in all caps, that's what you need to write down. So you need a piece of paper or you need a computer, or you need your phone or something you can write something down it. So basically, step one is you want to try and follow during the daylight hours and night. So you want to try to do it in both, because what you're trying to do is mimic what a law enforcement officer would do, is during the light hours and nighttime dark hours at least once. And for your third time, because you want to try to do it at least 3 times, look for traffic violations. And like I said, we'll go to the PowerPoint where I'll show you what you do. You want to watch cars driving by and be in a safe location. Now, obviously, and think about this, if you were a law enforcement officer, you would be driving and doing this. And so I want you to think about how tough that is to do, to multitask, because you would normally be driving and doing this. And if you can do this while you're a passenger in a car, better. I repeat, do not do this while you are driving, okay? Period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I will not accept this assignment if you do it while you're driving, period. So the only way to do this is while you're sitting down somewhere safe, or if you're a passenger in a vehicle. The best way is a passenger in the vehicle, obviously, when you're safe, but sitting down somewhere. So what I want you to do is look for traffic violations. And like I said, I will take you to the PowerPoint that you have access to, and I'll show you what I mean by traffic violations. But what you're going to do, since you're not a trained law enforcement officer, is you're just going to start looking for traffic violations. And when you see one, so here it is in green in all caps, you're going to write down what the traffic violation is. Okay, now you're going to look around wherever you're at for a safe place, if you were a law enforcement officer, where you would pull that vehicle over. Now you're going to, because it's in green and in caps, you're going to write down the location, intersection, or business where you think that vehicle will pull over, where you think it will pull over. And believe me, the vehicles always don't pull over. And you will end up, because normally what would happen is, this is the point as an officer where I would tell dispatch, okay, here's the description of the vehicle and here's where I think they're going to end up. But obviously they may not end up there, so I would have to update my dispatcher. So then I'm going to write down, I want you to write down the license plate number, the license plate state, whether it's Oregon, California, Washington, the make, model, color, or any other distinguishing marks of the vehicle. So if it's a Ford, Toyota, is it a Tesla, is it a truck, what model, is it a Prius, is it a BMW, is it a Model 4, what kind of car is it? Anything you can tell me about that car so we can find out. Okay, because that's what I would normally do. Normally I would say, control, which is my dispatch. I would go 487 Nevada, which meant traffic stop. And then I would read the plate out. I would say Nevada 487, Paul Baker David, because we would read it phonetically so they knew what I was saying. And then I would say, I'll be at the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Lake Mead Boulevard. So that's basically what you're doing, but I'm making you give a little bit more information because you're going to be sitting down. All right. And then I want you to write down how you're going to walk up to the vehicle. Okay, so are you going to walk up to the driver's side? Are you going to walk up to the passenger side? Because I don't know where you're at. And we do it differently every time, depending how we can do it safely. Sometimes we walk up to the driver's side. Sometimes we walk up to the passenger side. If we're on the freeway, sometimes we walk up to the passenger side because it's not safe to walk up to the driver's side. So just tell me where you're going to walk up to, depending on how it's safe for you. Okay, now I want you to stop looking at the vehicle. And this is where you have to really use the honor system, because we have to as well, okay? We basically have to. That's how it works. And now I want you to write down, by using the honor system, what the sex, race, age, and any other characteristics of the driver and any passengers of the vehicle are. And this is why I want you to try to do it at night as well, okay? And then I want you to do steps 1 through 3, 3 different times in 3 different areas of town. Okay? And I want you then to answer, after you do that, do you have any new insights? Or was this exactly as you thought? And did you learn anything? Okay? So basically, that's all you're doing is you're just, step 1, you're doing it 3 different times at the day, at the night, at different places. You're looking for a traffic violation. You're writing down the location, where you think the vehicle will pull over. You're writing down the license plate number, the state, the make, model, color, or any other distinguishing marks on the vehicle, like if it has a bumper sticker or a big old dent in it. You're writing down where you're going to walk up to the vehicle and contact the driver on the passenger side or the driver's side. And then you're going to stop looking at the vehicle and then write down all this information. And then after you do that 3 times, you're going to answer these 3 questions. All right, now we're going to our PowerPoint. And we're going to talk about traffic offenses. And these are the main things you're going to be looking for cars doing, okay? And this might be one of the things, and this is what I see a lot of students see, is they didn't realize how many people violate traffic laws. And I'm going to tell you the number one thing that we see that you're might not see is speeding. That's what kills a lot of people, is speeding. Because people speed or they don't slow down and stop, that they run people over and kill people, unfortunately. But so how is a traffic stop conducted? If you notice right here, if you see where the officer's car is parked, if you notice his front wheels are turned to the left, that's because at night, a lot of people are drawn, especially if they're under any type of influence of drugs or alcohol, to the red and blue lights. And a lot of officers have been hit and killed because people hit the back of the officer's car and then hit the officer that's out of their car. So if their wheels are turned, at least the car, if it's not directly aimed towards the officer, won't hit the officer. But there are reasons that we park the cars a certain way. We want to try to end up in a safe location. We want to let dispatch know where we are. All those things I've told you already. We're looking, is the car registered? Most states, you have to have a front license plate on your vehicle. We want to make sure if there is no license plate, that it has a temporary registration on it and it's current. So you should at least be looking for a license plate or a sticker on it that it's currently registered, or a temporary registration that's current. So that could be a reason to stop somebody. Windshield. A lot of people will have things hanging from their windshield. And I know you go, well, wait, they sell that at the store and at Walmart. But actually you can't obstruct your windshield. So that's a reason to pull somebody over. If your window tint is too dark. Now you ask me what's too dark. Well, I never knew, because I never had, there's a little gauge that you can sell. But if you can't really see in their window and see what they're doing and see the person and see who they are and make out what they're doing, it's too dark. So that's one way to tell. If their windshield's broken, where it's kind of making a hindrance to see out, that's not good. All right, improper lane change. This happens all the time. So do you see this blue car? So if they have a left turn lane and their left turn lane is green, which turn, if they're making a left turn, which one of these turns is illegal? They can get, it's illegal to do. What do you think? This is the number 1 turn lane. This is the number 2 turn lane. Which one? Is this one illegal? Is this one illegal? I'll tell you right now that the number 2 one's illegal, and I'll tell you why. So if this blue car goes like this and they go into the number 2 turn lane, that's illegal. Let me tell you why. If I was a car right here and I stopped on red, if this blue car right here had the green light and he was turning, and I was here in the red car and I was turning right and I stopped, it's legal for me on red to make a right turn here and stop here, but my lane is right here. So if this blue car went and turned here and hit me, that's why it's illegal for me to use the red to turn right here in the number 2 turn lane, is because if I hit the red car, I'm using words that are weird, but anyway, that's why it's illegal. So improper lane change, if you see this happen, and it happens all the time because it's tight, it's hard to make that turn. You have to go really slow to turn into this inside left lane. You see people all the time do this because it's easy, but that is illegal. Same here. When you make a left turn here, you have to go into the inside lane. People don't do that though. You see them go vroom because it's easier to make that turn, but that is illegal. So just so you know, that's an improper lane change. You have to turn into the inside lane right here, the inside lane. You can't go outside. That outside lane is illegal. And the reason being is because the person who wants to make a right turn here can do so on a red light, and they get that lane. That is the reason. So that's another traffic violation you can make a stop for. Also, following too closely. I always hear people say, this car right here always says, I was following this person and they stopped too fast. They stopped really fast and I hit them. And it was their fault because they stopped too fast. And I'll go, you were following too closely. And they go, no, it's their fault. They stopped too fast. And then I ask this person and they go, well, I was following this person and they stopped really fast. And I say, it was your fault. So guess who gets a ticket? Not this person who really probably stopped too fast. It doesn't matter because this person and this person were following too closely. This person had a 2-year-old run right out in front of them. Now that 2-year-old did run out in the road. Okay. And that mom should have been watching that 2-year-old that ran out into the road. But it doesn't matter, okay? Because guess what? That 2-year-old is still alive, thank goodness, because that person was watching where they were driving, okay? This person and this person should have left enough room so that if a 2-year-old runs out, they all have enough time to stop. So this person broke the law and this person broke the law. This person was paying attention for anything to happen that they had enough room to stop. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can call me or email me and I can explain it to you a little bit more. All right, unsafe lane change. This is an unsafe lane change. So you can't just pull in front of somebody like that. You have to put your blinker on and you have to allow enough time to safely change the lane with somebody in front of you. All right, running a red light. Okay, I always used to get this. Whenever I would sight for a red light, what would happen is a red light doesn't mean that the light turns red and then you go through it. So that's running a red light. You see how the red light is red and the person is through the intersection? And the reason that's a red light, and I know it's a red light, because after a light turns red, it takes 3 seconds before this person's light turns green. So I already know if this person's in the intersection, not only had this light turned red, but it was 3 seconds before this person's light turns green, and then that person entered the intersection. So do you know that that person really ran that red light? So that's kind of scary. Okay, so that's another traffic violation. Speeding's a violation. Seatbelt used to be what we called a secondary violation. That meant an officer couldn't pull you over if they saw you had your seatbelt off. But if they saw you run a red light and you had your seatbelt off, they could pull you over for speeding and then they could cite you for your seatbelt. Nowadays, seatbelt's a primary violation, which means if you don't have your seatbelt on, you can get pulled over. And yes, that does mean if you're putting it on while you've already got your car running and you're driving in a parking lot, you can get cited for it. Texting is a primary driving, so you can get pulled over for doing it. And it's a big fine, and you can't go to school for, I mean, it's just scary, folks, and your insurance goes up. So put your phone away, turn on those things that when you're driving, you can't even get text. Don't even tempt yourself. No turn signal. That's, if you don't see people use turn signals, that's a violation. You can get pulled over. All right, so that is the assignment. If you have any concerns or questions, please let me know. I've got office hours, but otherwise, have fun doing this. I think I've always seen students enjoy doing this, and I think you'll enjoy it, and I look forward to reading your journals. All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.